This is a Sports Catastrophe production.
Hey there, Heather Ho, there's Jeff Cutter Diamond. Welcome you to another Sports Catastrophe Birthday Boy. And the birthday boy for today, August the 9th, is a quarterback that made lots of history by him just being a quarterback and making the finals and all that. He's best known for what he did in Super Bowl 23 against the Denver Broncos, making him the first black quarterback to start and win a Super Bowl. It's amazing how big I'm doing with black quarterbacks and all that. Doing one on Kyler Murray just 2 days ago. Now it's Doug Williams. Anyway, Doug Williams was born in 1955, so he's 68 years old, and is a senior advisor for the Washington Commanders. Anyway, Williams would attend Grambling State University, a historic black college, if you will, and played under the great head coach Eddie Robinson. He helped them win 3 SWAC, or Southwestern Athletic Conference, championships. Was named Black College Player of the Year twice. When the NCAA included HBCU teams in their stats, he actually led the NCAA in categories in 1977, passing yards over 3,200, touchdown passes 38, and you're thinking, that doesn't seem great. Well, these are 1977 numbers, not 2023 numbers. Anyway, he actually finished 4th in the Heisman Trophy, behind Earl Campbell of Texas, Terry Miller of, I believe, Oregon State, and Ken McAfee from the University of Notre Dame. Doug Williams did graduate from Grambling with a bachelor's degree in education, and would work on his master's before the 1978 NFL Draft. Despite his success, only Tampa wanted to scout him, and Joe Gibbs, before he was Washington head coach, he was the offensive coordinator for Tampa, scouted him and all that. I was impressed by his poise, work ethic, and studious nature, all of that. So, following Gibbs' recommendation, Tampa said, why not? The funny thing was, Tampa actually had the number 1 pick because, they were still shit. But they traded it to Houston. It was a gigantic trade, giving Houston the number 1 pick, and Earl Campbell from the University of Texas got to play for the Oilers, so he didn't have to go far. He just stayed in the state of Texas. Kansas City would take Art Still, 2nd overall from Kentucky, defensive end, and wide receiver Wes Chandler from Florida went to New Orleans. Terry Miller from Oklahoma State, I said Oregon State, sorry, went 5th to Buffalo. Flop. Ken McAfee, the tight end, ahead of Doug Williams, Grambling, went to San Francisco from Notre Dame. Flop. Anyway, as a quarterback, he was the first quarterback taken in the draft. So he went 17th overall to Tampa in the pick that they swapped with Houston. The second quarterback taken in that draft would be Matt Cavanaugh, 50th to the Pats. So anyway, he looked pretty good. He could throw long passes downfield, and the Bears and the Bucks knew they had it and all that. In fact, in 1979, when the Bears took on the Bucks, Doug Williams and his opposite number, Vince Evans, made it the first NFL game to start a black quarterback. Tampa, with Williams as starter, did much better, getting to 3 playoff spots in 5 years, including somehow, in some way, getting to the 1979-80 NFC title game, where if it wasn't for bad luck, they would have been in the finals against the Steelers. And Williams would improve his completion percentage every year. Unfortunately, he was the only starting African-American quarterback at the time, and the fans gave him a lot of hell for it, obviously. His own coaching staff was upset and all that. In a book about the rise of the black quarterback, there was a training camp incident in 1978 which quarterbacks coach Bill Nelson berated Williams. It's going beyond, and what was described as going beyond coaching and becoming a personal attack. So anyway, Gibbs actually confronted Nelson. And Nelson backed off. And he never was a bitch again. Anyway, during his tenure, Doug Williams was paid $120,000 a year, the lowest salary of a starting quarterback, and heck, 12 backups were paid better than him. He asked for a $600,000 contract. Hugh Culverhouse decided to give him $400,000. Williams would sit out the 1983 season because he was not happy with Hugh Culverhouse. Unfortunately, Culverhouse had the stupid promotion of being a cheap ass, ruining Tampa's facilities and all that because of his bottom line and all that. Heck, Hugh Culverhouse is kind of why Bo Jackson didn't want to play for Tampa, even though that he was drafted by the Bucks in the 1985 draft because of his pain pinching ways, all of that. So Williams sat out. Tampa was 2-14, and they wouldn't go to the to the playoffs till '97. So inadvertently, Doug Williams started Tampa falling back into oblivion. Culverhouse was willing to let Doug Williams walk away over a small amount of money. I mean, 400,000. I would play for 400,000, but that's just me. Anyway, Doug Williams would sign with the USFL's Oklahoma Outlaws and sign a $3 million contract with a $1 million signing bonus. The Outlaws owner actually treated him like a human, not a piece of cattle in a stockyard. Williams would lead Oklahoma and the USFL in passing, getting 3,084 yards and 15 touchdowns. But unfortunately, he threw 21 interceptions, and they were 6-12. In '85, the team moved to Arizona to be the Arizona Outlaws. He did a little better: 3,673 yards, 21 touchdowns, 17 interceptions. After the USFL was shut down, Williams would return to the NFL, joining Washington. Fortunately, though, he had some help because Joe Gibbs, his former offensive coordinator, became the head coach. So Williams was going to back up Jay Schrader. But unfortunately, Schrader's injury meant that Doug Williams could step in, and he helped out. Anyway, Williams and Schrader would substitute for each other, in a sense. Doug Williams was given the chance to be the starter throughout the playoffs. So, yeah, the passer rating was why Washington used him, and he guided them to Super Bowl 22, becoming the first black quarterback to play in a Super Bowl, much less start it. So, anyway, Williams was interviewed and said, "How long have you been a black quarterback?" He supposedly replied, "I've been a quarterback since high school, and I've been black all my life." He actually was on the Boomer and Carden show and said that it's true and all that. And maybe the reporter was a little nervous. But fortunately for him, he didn't have any problems. Doug Williams had to go through a 6-hour root canal surgery to repair an abscess in his dental bridge. So anyway, regardless of that, the next day on the Sunday, he engineered a 42-10 rout against Denver. But he threw for 4 touchdown passes, all of them in the second quarter, which was a Super Bowl record for most touchdowns thrown in a single half, let alone a quarter. So that second quarter was Denver's downfall, in a sense, and Doug Williams exploited them for 4 touchdowns. He was named Super Bowl MVP for his efforts. So not only was he the first African-American quarterback to play in the Super Bowl, he won the Super Bowl and was named Super Bowl MVP. Take that, haters. And with his 340 yards, he broke the Super Bowl single-game record set by Joe Montana in 1985. Unfortunately, though, Montana the next year would have 357 and break that record. Williams had the most passing touchdowns in a Super Bowl, well, tied it with Terry Bradshaw, who did 4 in 1979. Sadly, though, Montana also broke that record in Super Bowl 24, not Super Bowl 23. Regardless, Doug Williams' 80-yard pass was the longest in Super Bowl history until Favre's pass to Antonio Freeman. for 81 yards. I thought Andre Rison had that record. The Farts of Rison. That's not. Unfortunately, Doug Williams would suffer from injuries, and Mark Rippon, the Canadian quarterback, won the starting job. Despite competing for the same starting job, Williams and Rippon actually were supportive of each other, and t-shirts were sold with the caption, "Unite We Stand," and all that. Williams would play in 1989 as Rippon's backup, and Rippon won a trip to the Pro Bowl. Anyway, finances was why Williams left Washington. He was supposed to get $1 million as the team's backup quarterback, but Washington signed Jeff Rutledge to be the backup for less money. Williams didn't get any attention from other teams following his waiver by the Redskins, which was stupid because he could have played somewhere else. He was 8-9 as Redskins starter. Well, 5-9 in the regular season, but then in the playoffs he was 3-0. So kind of overrated, I guess. In that, yeah, it was a little overrated. As a quarterback, he threw 100 touchdowns in 88 games. Anyway, he would go to be a college football analyst for the fledgling Black Entertainment Television. He liked his change of pace, but he wanted to return to football. And went to high school in Pointe Coupee, Louisiana. They actually beat the number 2 team in the state, despite being 5-5. He would go to coach his former high school in Louisiana, named Northeast High. In the '93 Louisiana playoffs, his team beat Isidore Newman, or the high school where senior quarterback Peyton Manning was there. Yes, Peyton Manning's from Louisiana. So they took down Peyton Manning. Wow. He would become running backs coach for Navy in '94 and become offensive coordinator for Scotland in the World League of American Football in '95. Oh, it should have been NFL Europe. Williams would become collegiate head coach for Morehouse College and then Grambling. Signed him in '98, succeeding Eddie Robinson. It was hard for Grambling to move on from Eddie Robinson, but he was getting up there. 4 decades as head coach. Doug Williams was the guy who was going to replace him. And led them to 3 straight athletic SWAC titles, but then he went to Tampa to be a personal executive. And Doug Williams actually got to give the New York Giants the Lombardi Trophy in Super Bowl 42. So yeah, he was GM of the United Football League's Virginia Destroyers, but then he went back to Grambling for a few years. He's a senior executive with the Washington organization. So anyway, Williams Williams and his 3rd wife have 8 children. His sons are collegiate athletes. Adrian played for Brown. DJ was playing for Grambling. He has a nephew, Johnny Huggins, who played in the NFL. But anyway, here's the big one. Doug Williams and fellow Grambling State quarterback James Harris co-founded the Black College Football Hall of Fame. I'm actually shocked that never happened. So yeah, it's a huge event and all that. So for Grambling State, he was 61-34 and all that. His high point was 8th place. Well, was winning the national championship in 2001 for them. Good job. So yeah, so Doug Williams had some issues being a black quarterback. That's plain as they can see. But, he rose above it. He started a Super Bowl. He won a Super Bowl and won MVP in the Super Bowl. You can't beat that, despite the fact that people think, oh, well, Washington was going to win because of their offensive line. Yeah, but that was for Timmy Smith. He could still throw the ball deep. And Tampa made a dumb mistake letting him go early. Penny pitching just doesn't work out that way, does it? He could cover house. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond. I do.